All right. Thanks everyone for joining us, and I know that there'll be more that will join in. I am privileged today to bring to you Warren Weeks, who I think I outlined in my communications that I have learned a lot from by following and attending conference sessions that he has provided. And I wanted to be able to provide a resource to colleagues who are in the throes of things. I'm in a blessed position right now not to be so much affected directly right now, and really wanted to bring to all of you that I know are in the trenches with an expert in what we are being asked to do for our clients, and that's communicating first and foremost, but now communicating in a time of crisis. And so thank you, Warren, for joining us today, for offering an hour of your time. I'm incredibly indebted to you. And our membership, I was saying that probably a quarter of our membership by the time we're done will be on this call, and that just speaks volumes for how planners are feeling and what's needed right now. And so your expertise is incredibly valuable to us, Warren. So thank you. I wondered if we could
Thank you for
start.
having me here.
Yeah, I can't say thank you enough. So I want to make sure that I don't monopolize any discussion, and I want all of us to have a chance to get our questions in. So I've asked for folks to put their questions in the chat feature. There is a Q&A section that you can pop them in, and I'll try and watch for both so that Warren can focus on what he is saying and thinking about. So I wanted to just start our discussion with asking you, Warren, what is a crisis communications action plan, and how does it differ? What elements are different than a traditional communications plan that we may have mapped out for our clients' events? So what would a crisis communications action plan look like?
So a crisis communications plan, it's funny that, I go to all these events and I speak to audiences and I'll ask, usually at the beginning, I'll say, how many, just show by show of hands, how many people in this audience have a crisis management plan for your company? And these are businesses that you would think the number should be pretty high. And I can't remember seeing more than 15% of the hands that have gone up in the past year. Said people that's a huge vulnerability, right? And so most organizations think that it won't happen to them, and most of them are right. But here we are in this, once in a generation situation where everybody's dealing with the same crisis at the same time. So to me, a crisis management or crisis communications plan is something that has there's two streams. First of all, there's the operational stream, like what are we going to do operationally as a business, and that's where I think a lot of people will have questions today. And as a business owner as well, and I empathize with the situation that everybody's in, I have those same situations and dilemmas that I'm dealing with. And then you have the communications component, and those two things kind of need to go together. So to me, a crisis management plan is something that when day-to-day business isn't possible, such as we're seeing right now, when it has the opportunity to tarnish the brand or reputation of your business or the your ability to do business. To me, that's when you have to.
Oh,
God. There are a lot of resources online. There are a lot of best practices. I'll tell people, I'll direct you to books that I think you should write or things along those lines, if that's useful at all. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a lag there, but yes, absolutely can hear you. And that's, what would be some of those go-to resources just to start
Sure.
kind of going down that path?
So there's a woman in Montreal. Her name's Melissa Agnes. Her last name is Agnes, and she's got a great book called Crisis Ready. It is again, a little late. We're in the middle of this thing, but to me, there's no time like the present. So that would be a resource that I would take advantage of. Just blog posts, best practices. I put a lot of this stuff online. It's on my website. Like, the principles aren't really complicated, and it's funny that most people, if you were sitting in a boardroom a month ago, ask everyone who's on the call today, if I said, what would you do in the event of a crisis? And you would say, well, I would do this and I would do that. And how would you want to communicate? And they would say, well, I would want to express empathy and I'd want to be prompt. When things are going fine, we all know how to communicate. But when when the you know what hits the fan, that's when we start making poor decisions. That's when we get into what I call fight or flight mode, and we start making rash decisions, and we forget to communicate properly. And empathy is really one of the first things that that goes out the window when people are dealing with a crisis. So um, to me, there's some basic things, but important things. Like I'm sure everyone is getting inundated. You know, your inbox, you're getting emails from companies that you did business with like 15 years ago. You're like, who the hell are they? And so we're almost getting overload of all these companies. Like the desire to communicate is trumping actual information. Like so, one of the first things I would say that if you're going to communicate with your client base, your sponsors, your key audiences, the primary decision should be, am I providing value to this audience? Like I don't want to send out an email just for the sake of sending it out. Like just so like, well, I saw Home Depot did one and Starbucks did one, and my duct cleaning company sent me an email, so I should be sending one too. I don't think that's the case. I haven't sent any communications to clients at this point. Everyone knows where I am. I've been getting calls letting me know that they're canceling sessions and they're canceling talks, and I'm kind of dealing with them one-on-one, but I haven't sent out blanket statements because I don't think that would add any value to the audience right now, to my audience.
So if we are looking at our events, so we are kind of, we're hired to put together events, and part of that is communications, obviously, in promoting the event, in building the event, in executing. So a lot of us are in that stage where we're unplanning events, and so we have people that already have attendees registered for events that are in April, May, that they've made the decision to cancel. We have events that are in June, July, that do we move forward? So can you maybe speak to how we communicate at different points in our journey? So some of us are literally canceling when we have attendees registered. So what kinds of things what kind of tone or what kind of content should we be including for those kinds of communications for already registered attendees and where we've pulled the plug on that event?
Sure. So I think one of the important things to keep in mind is like the big picture. The big picture is, and I just saw that Porter and WestJet just suspended all of their flights until June 1st. Like this is happening on a global basis. Mind is like it's not just going through this, and so the people that you're communicating with won't be surprised by this. It's not going to be a huge shock to them that the event is going to be postponed or canceled. I think to me as a blanket statement, and this is difficult because businesses need revenues to sustain themselves, and money coming in, money going out, that kind of thing. My biggest takeaway for this call, this talk, would be 5 years from now, your customers, your clients, your members, your employees, your sponsors will remember how you handled the situation more than they will remember the situation itself. So yes, we had this pandemic. Yes, there was this virus. Yes, we shut everything down. But they're going to remember the leadership that your company showed. And so while it's easy to try to maybe take advantage of the situation short term and sort of maximize your revenues or keep those dollars in. And I think that, like Tim Hortons, for example, I think, no offense, hopefully no one's, working with Tim Hortons, but they had some issues where they were requiring sick notes from employees before they could not show up to work. I think they've since resolved that, and it was only a few of their franchisees, but like that looks really bad on the company. It looks like they're prioritizing profits over employees. And so the big takeaway here is that I'm very concerned about the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I'm also very concerned about the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And I think this is an opportunity for organizations, and I'm just a one-person company, right? Whether you're 10-person, 100-person, one-person company, when the dust settles and when this situation normalizes again, people will be remembering, how did that company treat me? How did they make me feel? Did they respect me? Did they communicate quickly with me? And so it's tough for a lot of people to think of all those things in the midst of a crisis like the one that we're dealing with now, because everybody's got their kids at home, and the shelves at the grocery stores are empty. It's like really, really crazy times. I would just ask you to think far out in terms of those relationships. Like I think financially, you're going to see the banks, you're going to see the government coming in with I think dollars to support small businesses in situations like this. I think that there will be, you have to be innovative and think like, what are solutions that we can add? What are some things that we can do to help keep those people on board, make those people happy that we're dealing with? But it's I really recommend that people keep that long-term view in mind. It's like very important to me. It's one of the, if you look at any company that screws up in the middle of a crisis, it's because they're thinking 2 inches in front of their face and they're not thinking long term. So how will people remember this 3, 4, 5 years down the road? That's really important to me.
So Warren, one of the questions from Diane is, what is the best way to approach and communicate with sponsors and exhibitors who have provided money and now lose key benefits because of an event cancellation? So they've given that sponsorship money, and actually, and it's interesting, she says that could be the key to the financial viability of an association. So some of those discussions fall on us as planners, as the people that are the interface between a client and a sponsor, or a client and a vendor. What are some of the things, the tactical things that we can do or say or write that will help communicate from a position of transparency and authentic and empathetic, but yet, they may be very hard discussions to have. Can you speak to that a little bit about how are there words that we should be using? Are there tones that we should be using? That sort of thing.
So this is going to depend a bit on the mindset of the sponsor. Do they want those dollars back? Are they willing to let it ride until next time? Like, my key takeaway here would be, if I'm a sponsor, what am I looking for? Why do people sponsor events? They sponsor them because they want profile, because they want value, because they want to grow their business. So I would be really looking at ways, how can I provide value to that sponsor? Whether that is through, look, I'll say, while the event that we had coming up in March or April or June or whatever is postponed or canceled, I want to assure you that we will be providing you, when the event is rescheduled, we will be providing you with the full suite of promotion or profile or benefits or whatever that we said we're going to. And then I'd be looking for other ways to provide value to them. Do you have a partner organization that has a magazine that could do a profile on them? Could you do a podcast interview with them? Could you do some sort of benefits concert that, like, this is, I think, people need to be agile and they need to be thinking about ways to create value for people in this time. Unfortunately, some of them might just say, look, I need my money back and I need it back next Tuesday. And that's unfortunate. And that's when I think, if your business has a credit line in place, that would be something that you might need to fall back on. Again, I don't want to make this too operational in nature, but I think there will be government programs that are coming out. I just saw a headline today saying that Canadian banks might be deferring mortgage payments up to 6 months. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that stuff coming in. Like, nobody wants businesses to be going down right now. When you have those conversations with sponsors, I would have them one-on-one. I wouldn't send out a mass email to everybody. I would try to do it as in person as I could, maybe on a video call like this, so you can actually look people in the eyes and sort of respond to their facial cues. Second would be on the telephone, to get them on the phone, and to sort of be, proactive and say, look, I know what's on your mind. You're probably wondering what's happened to this event, and you have this sponsorship, and you're probably wondering, what's going to come of this. And I want to assure you that our company is committed to getting you all the 100% of the value that you signed up for, and then some. And so, whether that's an event that happens in October or one that happens next year, if we want to maybe promise them discounted sponsorship for like the second next conference if they stay on and do business with you. And then I'd really be looking for ways to add value to people. Like I, for example, started a podcast about 2 years ago, and I'm already reaching out to people because I've got some time on my hands, right, business wise. So I've been reaching out to people who I would like to have in my business orbit in the next 12 months and saying, would you like to be a guest on this show? It's we often don't have time to think because we're so busy. And one of the things that I think the situation is giving us is an opportunity to be strategic, to be innovative, to be a little bit agile. And like, I would just think, how can I add value to these people? How can I add value to them? Or ask them, what would it take for you to stay on board as a sponsor for this? Understanding that this conference that we had coming up is going to be rescheduled. What would it take? Like, what will make you happy? and keeping in mind that those dollars are important to keep the wheels on the bus, and that we all have this kind of collaborative relationship. And so not don't avoid the elephant in the room, but do so from a position of empathy and value, as opposed to coming to them from a place of kind of fear and defensiveness. I think even psychologically that will have an impact. You know, if you go in saying like, "How can we help you? What can we do for you in this time?" Start with empathy. It's one of the basic things. Like, you know, I've been tweeting to communications experts that I know, saying, you know, can you give me some tips you've learned in the past couple of weeks? And one of them said, like, empathy. Like, we're all taught that as communicators. We all know, start with empathy. Anytime that anyone's been affected negatively, we want to start with empathy. And it's just so quick for us to just get right to the point, because we're a little bit anxious, we're a little bit amped up. Ask them how they're doing. You know, how are you doing? You know, I know it's really, really strange times. How's your family? Is everybody okay? How's business going? You know, just that little thing right off the top, as opposed to getting right into to brass tacks, I think would be key. And these are all, you know, standard crisis management tactics. Like, start with empathy, be transparent, be timely, provide value. You know, we can't tell them when we're going to fix the situation, because this is a global situation. But in terms of the relationship, what are the concrete things you can do on a day-to-day basis? I know that's kind of a long and rambly answer, but I hope that sort of addresses some of it.
Thank you for that. We have a couple of questions. One is, what has been the best communications that you have seen so far, like as an example? And the other question is looking for an overview of crisis management best practices. So I think you laid some of those out, is that empathy and the, you know, relationship building, and not going right, you know, to the meat and potatoes, but more taking that pause to listen. Is there anything else as far as so we talked about that, you know, where some of us are in that stage where we're unplanning actual events. There's other of us that are dealing with people that are also you know, looking for that immediate refund or whatever. Like, those conversations are somewhat getting escalated, and I think probably some of us are uncomfortable with those difficult conversations. So any guidance around that? So those three kind of questions there. What has been the best communications that you've seen, as an example? Are there any other crisis management best practices? And then how do we deal with escalated conversations?
Okay. So the first one was best examples. What was the second one?
It's just an overview of crisis management best practices,
Right.
in addition to the operational suggestions that you have. Like, are there, is there a framework
Sure.
that you use? Like, when you work with someone in crisis, what kind of a process do you follow with them? What do you walk them through?
Sure. So the best example, you know, I think the one that's going to stand out 5 years from now is the NBA, you know, the National Basketball Association, because I think I was shocked when I heard that they'd canceled all their games. They were like, that to me, that's when, you know, stuff got real, so to speak. You know, when you know, I was visiting family and someone said the NBA just canceled all their games. I'm like, oh my God. And you knew that that was the first domino for everyone else. And, you know, that to me, I think we will look back on that as saving, you know, thousands of lives. And so the way they communicated that, I think that was a tough operational decision, and I thought they communicated it very well. You know, one of the, you know, on the negative side, I think Tim Hortons has had some struggles. They're trying to rebound from that. There was Norwegian Cruise Lines. I'll give you some bad examples. So Norwegian Cruise Lines, there was leaked emails from the company saying that they were sending emails out to their salespeople, telling them to basically lie if they got asked about the virus. And that, I would say that company will suffer incredibly when this thing normalizes. Like, you know, how, like, they were trying to put people in harm's way just to get those dollars. That is something that we don't want to be doing. Who's been doing it well? I thought Starbucks did a very good job this week. You know, I have a Starbucks just a block away from my house. I've just wandered by. I haven't gone in, but they've been, I think, very proactive. And, you know, it seems to me that they're more concerned about the safety of their employees and their customers than they are about revenues. And that's a difficult spot to be in, especially when you're a small business. But I really think that, and I know it's easy to say, but I am a small business as well. You know, I'm losing significant amounts of business over the next 2 months. I'm guessing it's going to be over the next 3 or 4. Like, I've got stuff booked for April and May, and I can't imagine that it's going to go forward. But first of all, having that faith that it will down the road. So if you want to look at companies they've done it well. The NBA, Starbucks, and so what are they doing well? Which goes into the next
Yeah.
piece, which is like, what are those best practices? Start with empathy again. Try to be transparent and timely. You don't necessarily have to send out a message to everybody, but I think you do want to send out an important message to your key audiences. And the question I would ask again is this important to them? Does this provide value to them? Is there a milestone? Is there a change? Has something taken place that we need to let them know about? Just looking through some of my notes here from a talk that I gave recently. Respond in the right platform. So if someone sends you a note on Facebook, respond on Facebook. Don't respond by email. If someone, and it sounds kind of basic, but a lot of companies, if you have an Instagram account, then you get a question from a customer, don't pick up the phone and call them, because then other people are going to see that note. So one of the just very simple things is respond in the platform where you got the request. One would be to say sorry, like apologize. Like this is key stuff that so many people, because we don't want to apologize. We think if I apologize, I'm showing weakness, or if I apologize, I'm admitting some sort of guilt or liability. And if there is a situation that has taken place that negatively impacts them, I think just say sorry, and then tell them what you're trying to do to fix the situation. Like if you look like Maple Leaf Foods, right? Maple Leaf Foods, 2008, they had that huge crisis. 23 people died, thousands of them sickened. And if you look, and they're widely held as the best example of crisis management or crisis communications in Canadian corporate history. And so how could you do that on a smaller scale? And what did they do? They admitted the problem. They told you what they were doing to fix it. Sorry with sneeze. Oh my God. I don't have the virus. Sorry. They told you what happened. They admitted the problem quickly and proactively. They took all their products off the shelves operationally. They apologized, they fixed it, and then they got back to business as usual. And they took a bit of a financial hit, but big picture, like this is a company with $5 billion in revenues per year. I think they really, if they had shown that they prioritize profits over people, I think the company would have been devastated to a high degree. So, I keep saying the same things kind of over and over again. Demonstrate empathy, communicate quickly, communicate in the right platform. Try to have all your information in one place. Like if you get a question from one of your customers, the other customers probably have a similar question, right? So just working on some key messages and notes that you can have. If you have employees for your company, making sure that your customers are getting consistent messages from them. You don't want to be hearing one thing from Janet and something else from Steve, right? Making sure that everybody understands. And also if you have employees, and I know there are some solopreneurs on the phone or on the line, and there's some folks that have businesses, your employees are an audience as well. Don't forget to communicate with your employees, because they are your ambassadors. They are out in the community speaking on your behalf, and they also want to see that you're doing the right thing.
Actually, Warren, that actually led into one of my questions was, does one message, whether you're responding on multiple platforms, but is one message that's delivered well and written well or spoken well, is that sufficient, or should we be adapting messages to different audiences? And then the other thing is, who should be doing the communicating? A lot of us are leads on these events, but we're not the end clients. We're not the volunteer board president of an association, or we're not the CEO of the company. So how do we as event planners guide our clients as to what the message, who crafts it, who writes it? Is it, first person, third person, what is it? And who should be communicating that?
Yeah, sure. I think where possible, because of the seriousness of the situation, it should be, ideally the most senior person within the organization. Or you might have situations where, you might have an employee who has a very, very strong relationship with that person. So I think you might have to make those calls on a, I don't want to hear from the president if I've never talked to them before. Like if I have a really strong relationship with James, the frontline guy. So I don't think there's one blanket answer for that. I think it's whoever has the strongest relationship. And again, for a lot of small companies, in those situations, I'm probably going to be looking for the most senior person, because that's, who signs the checks, that's who's the most accountable. I think and then to your other question, the content of the message, who drafts them. I would say, again, the most senior person who has a sort of an understanding of communications. If you're horrible at communications, find somebody online to do this, communications shop or a freelancer to write this up. Look up crisis management best practices on Google. Like it's not rocket science, but it becomes very difficult because you're also trying to deal with the crisis at the same time. But I would say to have, if I'm the lead of the company, I'll be using first person. I am sorry we had to cancel this. I want to know what we can do. If it's maybe one of your employees, they might want to talk second person. We are very sorry. To me, it's the content is more important than the grammar, or is it I or is it we, to get those big things right. And at a time when a lot of companies aren't, it's, if I'm going to keep repeating the same things, be empathetic, because so many people aren't. Like, and to keep in mind also, like, you're not a doctor, you're not a scientist. I'm getting a lot of emails this week from organizations that are giving me updates and what to do and wash your hands. And like, I don't need to know that from McDonald's, right? Like, I just need to know, when is your location open? When is it closed? What are you doing to keep people safe? I don't need to, like, a lot of times we want to use this opportunity to educate people and to shove too much information in. Like, remember what your role is and remember what your relationship is. And if you think about that, it's very narrow. Like with my clients, I have a specific event that was scheduled for, April 20th or whatever. And so I'm just talking about that one event. And I'm also starting all those, if you can see in my inbox, I'm like asking people, how are you doing? I hope things are going well. How are you surviving this week? Is there anything I can do to assist? Those things are human, but they go a long way in times of crisis like this.
Okay. So one of Natalie said, how do we coach our clients or volunteers to calm the freak down? I love that. Before they respond, seeing a lot of knee-jerk responses, which I think you've alluded to for sure, that there are some communications that probably shouldn't have taken place or didn't do it well. That's one question. And then, are there any templates available to us to download and use as a starting point? So I think that's as a crisis communications plan. So first of all, how do we bridge the gap between someone that is, looking at their bottom line and seeing it evaporate, and yet having a responsibility to communicate with attendees or vendors or suppliers? Yeah, is there anything you can guide us? Like, how do we become the pause between, information and responding to it?
So calm the freak down. That's the first one. So I think it helps to, if you think of yourself as a director, right? Like if you're Steven Spielberg, people will focus on where the camera is. And right now the camera is on today. And so it's very easy for us to be in the middle of this. And the same thing goes for the stock market. Like, why is the stock market down 40, 50, 60% over the last couple of weeks? Are those companies any less profitable or any less amazing? In a lot of cases, they're not. It's just people's, this monkey or lizard brain that we have, in times of crisis. That's why you have people going and buying up toilet paper and all the bread and milk at the grocery store more than they're ever going to need. So I think it's helpful for us to sort of take the camera and zoom it back a little bit and to understand that this will pass, right? These things have happened before. It will pass. And I think that, again, it's an opportunity for the people who speak with a voice of reason, the people who are able to calm everyone down. If you speak to people and communicate that, like, look, we will get through this. We're going to make sure that you're taken care of. This is a temporary setback, and we will, and talk about how you're going to do that. A lot of organizations are telling their employees that, like with, workers at the arenas, that, some of the players, you're taking care of, obviously not a thing that everybody understand. Like, if you feed into the panic, if you pour gasoline on it and light a match, you're going to be contributing to that. But I think part of it is just to tell people, look, it's going to be okay. It's going to take some time. It might take weeks. It might take a few months, but we will get through this. That would be my like, there's not a lot of people who are actually, you get a lot of mixed messages, even federally and provincially. We're getting different messages from different people. And I think that's confusing to a lot of folks. It's it's easy to say, but at the same time, I think it's kind of difficult to say, to let people know that we have to think long term and that this will be, it's okay, to get them to sort of calm down. You have to be the voice of reason, be the example that they can learn from. People have asked me, aren't you freaked out? I'm like, not really. Like, I'm kind of irritated. I'm irked at this. It's concerning, but I'm not freaked out. My stress level is actually pretty low because this, I do crisis communications for a living, right? And you get into that sort of mindset. Like, I've been in volatile situations, and you understand that this is the worst part. When you're in the bottom of the curve and when you're dealing with all the stress, it can affect your brain. It can affect your sort of very primitive responses to that. And I think you need to have reason and intellect kind of override that. And just, if you tell people that it's going to be fine, and it is, at some point down the road, this will go away. They all do. Like, we were even seeing things normalizing in China. I think they've only had 1 or 2 cases in the last couple of days, right? Like, things are coming back to normal. So let's not be Chicken Little. Let's not say the sky is falling. When you talk to your employees, when you talk to your customers, they're gonna see that in your eyes. They'll hear it in your voice. And so for you to actually convince yourself first and actually believe it, and then think, what can I do? Like, I'm using the next couple of weeks to write a book. I've been wanting to write a book for years and years and years. And it occurred to me that I'll never have the time to do it until I retire someday. And then the book is useless. So I'm going to, like, and to me, that's going to be a driver of awareness for my business. And so, again, it's not something that everybody can do, but what can you do over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, that will help lay the foundation for your business down the road?
Well, I think, I mean, as event planners, I think probably every single one of us on this call are truly masterful at doing that, because that is our reality when we are on site. We always live for the plan A and execute plan A, but we always are living in that plan B. What if this does not go the way we intended? And it's not to this magnitude by any means, but it's more about, I think we have the ability and to be able to take that pause and to see the bigger picture. So it's really, I like your message about just really standing back and saying, we are the leaders here, and clients are looking to us. But we also, at the same time, I think, probably live on a very fine line that we have businesses that and our own livelihoods, because we are a unique group that we own businesses. We're not exclusively delivering events. We are running businesses as well. So Mireille, who's one of our planners, with multiple clients experiencing the same situation, is it okay to use the same template as a base to draft our messages, or should we literally be looking at drafting a different message from scratch for each client? Like, it sounds like your messages are kind of consistent, but should we customize, or is it a time when we can one size fits all kind of thing? So what would be your recommendation there?
I think it's okay to use the same sort of base, right? Because if you think in very broad strokes, express empathy. And now I might want to do that differently for different people. You don't want to have it sound like you're reading off a card. And then tell them, what am I doing to address the situation? Do I have to apologize for anything? How can I add value to them? And so I would have, like, for this situation, if those are my key points, I would have those written down on a piece of paper. And then I would, have a Sharpie in my hand, call up one of my clients, and then have that conversation with them. And then just kind of make sure that I check everything off, but I don't want to sound like I'm reading off like an index card or off my phone, right? So I think it's absolutely fine to use a sort of template for that, but then put in specific situations about their event. Like, I know that you had your event coming up in June or coming up in March or whatever. And then think for each of those people on the phone, what's their biggest issue? What's keeping them up at night? What's the biggest question that they have? And then try to address it and then resolve it. Like, for me, if I had put some money into an event and I didn't hear from the people, right? Because I think that's the biggest danger, is we don't talk to them at all. Like, I don't want to talk to them because if I call them, they might want their money back. I'm more concerned about the company that doesn't call me as opposed to the one that does. Like, if someone is proactively reaching out to me and saying, look, we appreciate your sponsorship and that you have for our event that's coming up, and we send out a communication that the event is going to be postponed or canceled. I'm sure you've seen that. We apologize for any inconvenience, but I want to assure you, as the president of this company or the principal of this company, that you were going to get 100% of the value that you signed up for that event and then some. Here are some of the things. So, when our event is run in November or whatever next year, and that's a whole other issue because the compressed schedule of getting all those events in, like that's going to be a bit of a nightmare. And then I'd be thinking, how else can I add value to them? And if you're creative, there's a lot of different ways. Think of the people in your orbit that you can connect and dots that you can connect, and maybe someone who provides service who you can kind of connect them with. Like without knowing the individuals here, this is where you want to get like a pen and a paper out and just start brainstorming. How can I add value? And so when you're talking to that individual on the phone, you can kind of tick off all those pieces and go through that list. And then they're going to think, like, of all the people that I've been dealing with, this person was proactive to me. This person was transparent with me. Like, you're actually kind of competing with all the other people that they deal with. You're competing with Rogers and Bell and Starbucks and WestJet and their kids' school and the local hospital. All of those service providers, the ones who are empathetic, quick, transparent, timely, and solutions oriented, those are going to be the ones that stand out. So, will that approach prevent them from asking for their money back? Not necessarily, but I would be more concerned. No news, I think, is bad news in this situation. Like if I've cut a check to your organization for a large sponsorship or a small one for that matter, and I haven't heard from anybody, that's going to have me more concerned than anything else. Like, have they forgotten about me? Do they not care about me? Is my investment gone? And that's when people's minds start kind of racing. So it's going to be very difficult, but I would suggest to be very proactive with those individuals, to be very calm and to say, look, we realize this situation is going to be over, and I'm committed personally to getting you all the value that we can, and then figuring out ways to do it, which is going to be tricky.
Super. There is a question I want to use as our wrap up, but just a question came in. Warren, do you personally have a business crisis communication plan? As independent planners working with both the long-term clients as well as the one-offs, how do we support their crisis communication plans, especially as we are not their primary spokesperson? So I think you've alluded to that about we can be the voice of calm. We can be the one that provides them with resources that guides them. Again, there's two different audiences for us. We're being looked at for assistance with events and communicating about events, and we're also looking at them as a client.
Yeah.
There's two kind of. So anything extra to add before we ask that last question?
So the one question was, do I have a plan, and how am I sort of executing that for my business? What was the other one?
Oh, it was just about that. It's the. Oh, I haven't given you the second question. I just asked about the one that, like, we have the events that are our clients, but they are our clients as well. So it's the two kind of focuses that we're playing, that we're focused on.
Okay. So for me, I do have a plan for my business. Operationally, my plan has been, now I've been in business for 17 years. I have a very low cost business. I operate out of my house. I do my sessions in client offices. And so, I had, because I do this for a living, I've had an idea that at some point down the road, we're going to have some sort of kick in the butt. Like, there's going to be some major thing that impacts my business. September 11th and financial crisis. Those were two big kind of moments that affected a lot of my clients and my business personally. One of my plans has been to create content, which is, I think that's how we know each other. I've been putting out content on LinkedIn, and I've been speaking at conferences, and just trying to get that awareness funnel going so that in a very competitive space, people are going to be aware of who I am. So plan number one for me has been very long-term, but getting my brand and my name out there so when people go to Google and they type in, media trainer, crisis trainer, social media speaker, that my name shows up. So that's been kind of, I wouldn't call it necessarily a crisis plan, but that's been my sort of long-term sort of reputation management or sort of awareness. Second one has been to put cash in the bank. And I've just been, putting cash in my business account, waiting for that. My accountant's like, you got to get this money out of here. I'm like, I'm leaving it in there. He's like, why? I said, because I called it my holy shit account. Hopefully I can swear on here, but I just said, you never know when the day might come. And so I'm keeping it there. And, so to me, I haven't sent out like a news release to all my clients. I have dozens of clients over the course of any year. I'd probably do 70 or 80 events in any given year. And so I've been dealing with them one at a time. And many of those clients are friends, right? So I'm starting out by asking about their kids. I said, is there anything that I can do for you? I'm putting on a webinar tomorrow about crisis management for sort of a broader audience, and giving that free of charge to people. To me, these are the things that I'm doing. I'm trying to be that voice of calm, that voice of reason, giving things away, giving my knowledge and expertise away, so that and it goes back to my original point. How can I add value? I have people they have questions, they're freaking out. When I ask people in those audiences, do you have a crisis management plan? And only 15% of them put their hand up. The other 85% of them are freaking out right now. So I'm trying to give them tools that they can actually use. So, operationally, my business is, financially going to be fine until this thing blows over. Sessions that have been deleted or dropped, will they get rescheduled? I don't know. I hope so. I think so. Might not be the case. I'm not losing any sleep over it at this point. And I know that might sound, easier said than done, but that's, and as inquiries come in on a one-off basis, I'm trying to do all the same things: lead with empathy, tell them what I'm doing. I've even had clients, like one of them called me up yesterday from Windsor and said, we had a call scheduled to talk about our session, which is coming up in April. And they said at the beginning of the call, you can probably guess why we're calling. I said, yeah, I guess we're probably canceling, right? She said, yeah. And she was concerned, like, is there going to be like a fee is for rescheduling, or is there a kill fee for the session? Now, that would be easy for me to do, right? Say yes to 50%, you have to pay 25%, and I got that money. I don't think that that's the right move for me long term, because they're going to have received zero support in a crisis. I'm going to have sent them a bill for something they didn't receive. And just for me, I don't think that's a good move for my business. If for some businesses, like, you have invested costs, you've rented things, AV, that kind of thing. So, every business is going to be a little bit different. But for me, that's the decision that I've made, to just say, look, no cost, whatever, I'll be here when you need me, and we'll connect a couple months down the road. So, every business is going to be a little bit different. I'm not saying that should be something that everybody does, but that's just, the question was, what's my plan? So that's what I'm doing.
Yep. And I think that's a blessed place to be. And I have to say that's, I'm very fortunate that this hasn't directly affected me, but I know that is absolutely not the case for a lot of and most of my colleagues. And so, perhaps it is a wake-up call, but right now it's a horrible wake-up call to do better when we know better. So before we just kind of wrap this up, I want to ask you, and this was a question that let me just make sure Sherry asked, was how do we deal with the uncertainty of no return to normal date, or when events may start up again? How do we keep communicating this piece? So perhaps we've gotten through the initial, the event is canceled or is postponed. How do we continue the communications between now and when things are a new normal? And so what does that look like? What should we be doing proactively? Should we be establishing regular communications? What's the tone of the communications? Is it factual versus, just touching base and checking in kind of thing? So do you have any idea to just kind of leave us more of an upbeat note as to when our business, our industry starts to find a new normal? And people are always going to connect face to face. So how do we maintain that with our clients and then with our events?
So I think there's two elements to this. And I think a lot of this goes back to human nature. With a lot of these individuals, like, from a business perspective, I wouldn't send them out any news unless we had some actual news to share. If I know a date that we're going to be rescheduling to, or if I need to tell them something operational, that's certainly an opportunity to connect with them. But I think the other opportunity, and again, it depends on, like, with a lot of my customers and clients that I deal with, they're not friends that we hang out on the weekends, but they're not strangers. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I have kind of relationships with these folks. So with some of them, I'll send them a text message. Like, it's so funny that, I used to love email. Now I hate email. can't stand, I can't get my inbox under 1,000, and email is just terrible to me. We need to deal with it. But like, I found that what I've done is with some of my clients, I'll get their mobile number, and we'll just send text back and forth. Hey, how's it going? How's the family? Hope everybody's keeping well. Anything I can do for you? Just those little, or if you want to do that by phone, and more, maybe for more of a telephone person, but check in on them as a human being. Say, how are things going? Just, again, that empathy, just check in. And on the business side, I would wait until you have some actual news. And, we'll see this in the community. Things will normalize. Flights will be reinstated. The borders will be opened again. Like, everyone will sense a sort of shift back to normal. And then when you have news, actually just communicate with them. But like, don't be afraid to get in touch with people.
So, and how, okay, so some of us are dealing with, 1,000 or plus attendees that we're trying to keep a rapport with in some cases. So I know Kate has a conference for, thousands in another month. So what kind of, we can't pick up the phone, obviously. We just don't have the bandwidth to do that. And our client probably doesn't have the bandwidth to do that. So, so would your advice be the same for that kind of attendee kind of, big, I get it with our clients, which, probably is a manageable number, but what about when we are looked to restore communications or continue communications with attendees of events? What would that be different?
Yes.
Do we communicate on all platforms? Do we?
So if you have thousands of attendees, I'm guessing that we have their contact information, their email addresses, they've opted into something. I would put a video together, use tools like, there's tools like, you could use Zoom, you could use Vidyard, the Bomb. There's all these video services that will actually compress your video so it doesn't crush people's hard drives and inboxes. Create a short video of your face talking to them, figure out what that message is in that update, and just send it through to them by email. That to me is better than just text. I would appreciate to see someone's face and have that human element, and you will be differentiating yourselves from other companies who are just sending those. Every time I see an email with the COVID capitals in the subject line, it just kind of gives me a little bit of a, so be a little bit different and send that email out to them with that little video on there, and then just like let them know what's going on. And give them your email address and say, if you have any questions, let me know. It's so funny that, when you put your email address, you're less likely to get a no because you seem more available to them. So that would be one of my my quick responses, is just record a quick video. Don't make it like 45 minutes, make it like 2 minutes long, 2.5 minutes long, give them a little update and send it over. That to me would be a great way to scale that human element. And so few people are doing that these days. I think that would be probably, for a large audience, the most powerful thing you can do.
Okay. So I'm just going to give a last call out to anyone that has any other questions. I'm hoping that, the questions have been answered. I think I've tried to capture all of them with Warren. But can you, just in the meantime, if we just wait for a couple of seconds for any final questions, can you share your contact information with us, that if we have clients that are looking for that, if when the dust settles, we're looking for a crisis communications plan so we don't find ourselves here again, if we are still in the throes of, what are we doing with June, July, August events that still are, my feeling is that we haven't reached the maximum here in Canada. So, like, what are we doing? I think there's still an opportunity to be very proactive here in Canada with our events that are kind of wait and see what's going to happen. So if you, how can you share your contact information? If you're, how can we reach you? I'm a firm believer in the value of experts on a team. And I think our industry is built on a team spirit. And I think we need to acknowledge when we don't know what we don't know. And I think today has just, helped enormously. But can you share your information with us?
Sure. It's just, Warren Weeks on any platform. You find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, website. I'm pretty findable online. I empathize with everybody who's on the webinar today. I know it's difficult times, but like the message that I've been saying, this too shall pass. It seems awful today with the sky falling, but I really believe there's going to be a big rebound down the road. In terms of operations, there are credit lines. I think that sponsors and clients will be will be understanding if you can treat them like a human being and be proactive with them. I try to see the big picture and not get too bogged down in the sort of the panic that you see in the news and online. Obviously, follow all those rules, but I think that, to me, I look at times like this and I see them, maybe just because I'm older now, I've been in this racket for 25 years, but I see it as an actual business opportunity. Like, I think that there's an opportunity for businesses who demonstrate leadership and rationale to actually emerge better from this once this is over. You can differentiate yourself from the others who are not doing it so well, the others who are being a little bit less human, those who aren't communicating as well. I really believe that that's the case. So, take this downtime to think, strategize, be innovative. What are some things that you can do? When it comes to communications, don't overdo it. Don't try to be a doctor, but just tell people what they need to know and think of ways you can add value to the people who are affected by this. And remember that they're all human beings.
What a great way to summarize. Thank you very, very much, Warren. And thank you, folks, for being on here. This was my way of trying to connect people that need resources with someone that is a resource. So thank you very much, Warren, for being with us. Warren, words fail me. I'm not a masterful communicator. But I really just wanted to put resources in front of people that I know are in the trenches of facing difficult conversations with clients and about their own businesses. So thank you so very much. With that, folks,
Thanks very much.
Yeah, I'm going to end the recording, and there's just some thanks coming in there, but truly at the end of the day, we're all in this. My hashtag that I keep using is #BetterTogether. So thank you, Warren.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, folks.
Take care, everybody.
All righty.
Bye-bye.